Hello, it is I, the HumpBackDiver, the land-dwelling diver, and today I bring you the third episode of my DBD portrait series. Now before I start the video, I do have a few things to tell you. Firstly, this is of course the third video in this series, so please go watch the other two videos, and who knows, maybe your favorite killer was done there. But if you wish to continue anyways, my main goal for this series is that I try to represent the killer's personalities or abilities in portrait form, and I gave myself 3 rules for this series. Rule number 1, I have to make these in portrait form and not landscape. Rule number 2, show the personality or abilities of the killers. And for my third rule, specifically for the licensed killers, only use their abilities shown in Dead by Daylight and not their original media. Alright, now that you got the gist for this series, I do have to say one more thing before I start the video. In my last 2 videos, I've gotten a lot of comments saying that I could use these in-game, and it requires no modding at all. And to tell you the truth, I had no plans to ever use these in-game. I know it might sound crazy since this is a portrait series, but I honest to God had no idea portrait packs were actually a thing until maybe like a week after I made my second video. I was just doing this series for fun and didn't really plan on anyone actually using these in-game. But I do understand that I do take a really long time to upload these videos since I have to make the portraits and do the editing myself. But as a thank you for anyone who has actually stuck with my channel since my first video, I'll be linking a Google Drive down below with all my portraits in it, including the ones from this video. But please watch my video before doing that. Now, I'm not sure if these portraits will exactly work in-game. As I said, I didn't really plan on actually using these in-game. So if there are any problems with the portraits, please tell me down below in the comments. Anyways, thank you for watching the intro long enough. Let's get to the video, shall we? Yes, the Huntress, one of the 3 killers that I absolutely despise going against in this game. I don't know if it's my terrible luck or my low MMR, but I always find myself fighting Huntress the most in this game, and I've honest to God grown tired of seeing her. Like, no shade towards Huntress players, I've just grown tired of seeing her is all. But I really do love her lore. With her father being killed by soldiers, she grew up with her mom in the Red Forest. Her mother taught her how to both survive and hunt in this harsh environment. But unfortunately, tragedy struck as when Anna was hunting out with her mom, a wild elk charged at her. Her mother got in between her and the elk, and while she did successfully kill the elk, she was punctured in the chest by the elk's antlers. And as her mom laid there slowly dying, she sang one little lullaby to Anna to comfort her, which is where the Huntress's lullaby comes from. Seriously, I do think a lot more killers should have a lullaby, as it makes fighting Huntress a lot more creepy and eerie when you're in the distance. I also really love how they reference the big elk that killed Anna's mother with the were-elk skin, it being like a creepy reminder of Anna's past. But anyways, how about we get to her abilities, shall we? Since the Huntress is one of the earliest killers to enter the game, her ability is incredibly simple, which is the ability to throw hatchets, being the game's first long-range killer, I believe. So of course, that's what I went with for her portrait. So I start this portrait off how I do all my other portraits, and that's by drawing the mask of the Huntress first. I'm really glad how the mask came out, but it did cause a few problems down the line with this portrait. Like how it kind of made Anna's head a bit hard to draw, but I feel like I did well with it. One thing I learned about drawing Huntress was that she doesn't really have any hair. That thing that I thought was hair that swooshes around in the air is actually some kind of like thin fabric that's attached to her mask. So that was neat to notice when I was drawing her. But I feel like the main issue that I had with this portrait was the hatchet. Since I wanted the hatchet to be like seen from a distance away from her, but since the portrait is kind of small, I had to somehow make it look like it was either moving really fast or just somewhere in or thrown in the distance. Trust me, it took me like 3 days to try to get it right. I ended up just like putting like a motion blur filter on it to try to make it look like she's thrown it. It probably doesn't look very good, but I feel like I tried my best, you know? About the coloring process, I actually had no real problems with it, and it was actually really fun to give the Huntress colors here, with like different like, I guess like blood effects, the dirtiness of her clothes, and I also took attention to detail and tried to give her patterns on some of her clothing. And what I mean by patterns, she has like this orange clothing on her stomach and this blue drape down her legs. And I had to look up what those look like in game to get the patterns. And the patterns aren't very good, but it was very fun to add them, just to give Huntress a bit more detail to her clothing. One more thing here, as you'll see in a bit, I try to make the background look like her map, Mother's Dwelling, by adding like a foresty area with some rain. I wish I could have included the main building into it, but again, the portrait is kind of small, so there was kind of no way for me to really include it. But with that, the portrait is now complete. So next up we got the Singularity. I've actually been pretty excited to do Singularity since he's by far one of my favorite original killers this game has brought to the fog. He was even one of the very first killers I actually remember fighting against in this game. And I just remember myself being completely mesmerized by his design. Which just makes me sad that I have an incredibly hard time playing as him since his power is so incredibly complex that my tiny brain just can't handle it. While his backstory isn't super memorable to me, I still think it's a pretty good read. Basically, in the far future, the Singularity, or Hux, was one of many robots that were sent to different planets to see if they'd be prepped for human habitation. And as Hux was exploring one of these planets, he came across an alien crystal. And upon touching this crystal, it not only infused him with incredible knowledge, but also gave him sentience. And with this sentience, Hux saw humanity as inferior compared to him, and was even disgusted that humans could even make something like him. So then he started to kill all the humans that were also deployed on the same planet as him. Well, I mean, they were clones, but still human. And with each human he killed, he would use their flesh to make himself a new body, basically making him the perfect life form. Or at least something better than humans. And that's basically the Singularity story. I probably got a few bits of his story wrong. As I said, his story isn't super memorable to me, but he is definitely part of my Robot Hall of Fame. Alright, enough chit-chat, let's get to his ability, shall we? As I said earlier, his power is kind of complicated, since there's so much to it. But basically, the gist of his power is mainly these biopods, which he can place on any elevated surface. These biopods then act like cameras for the Singularity. Then in camera mode, you can use them to scan survivors, which will then slipstream them. Then when a survivor is slipstreamed, you can scan them again to teleport to their immediate location. But if a survivor is right next to a pallet when you teleport to them, you will not only teleport to them but also break the pallet that they were near. But when you do teleport to a survivor, you'll be in overclock mode. While you're in overclock mode, you'll gain a temporary speed boost to most actions, such as breaking pallets faster, breaking walls faster, breaking generators faster, and vaulting faster. And then on top of that, you'll also gain a built-in Spirit Fury, and that's the Singularity's power. And for this portrait, I specifically wanted to focus on 3 things. 1, his biopods, 2, his teleportation, and 3, his overclock mode. So, fun fact, I've actually tried to draw Singularity before, not for this portrait, but just for like fan art purposes. And wow, he's actually incredibly hard to draw. And I've tried on several times to just like draw him normally, but they never end up looking good. Maybe I'll put some like examples here on screen. And I'm pretty sure that's because I keep trying to draw him from the side. So for this portrait, I decided to draw him from the front, and it makes it incredibly easier to draw him. So one thing you might notice right away is that I didn't draw his entire body, and that's because, as I said earlier, I wanted to include his teleportation, and I did that by representing him like coming out of the ground with like goo forming, which is what it looks like when he teleports. Then after I got the teleportation done, I wanted to try and represent his overclock mode, and I did that by drawing a broken pallet around him. So, you know, whenever you do teleport to a survivor near a pallet, it breaks it, and you go into like cooldown on the overclock mode. For the most part, coloring the Singularity went fine, but I did run into a bit of trouble with the teleportation goo, and that's I couldn't really find a good shade of purple to really differentiate it from Singularity's body. And even in the final product, it like kind of blends in with him, so I'm sorry about that. I also really wanted to do the pallet because I was kind of disappointed with my Nemesis portrait, where I have him breaking a pallet with his tentacle, and yet there are almost like no pallet shards going anywhere. So for this portrait, I definitely made sure to add some pallet shards exploding everywhere. But now that I have the pallet in place, I wanted to give him the the overclock effect, but like right after you destroy a pallet, after teleporting. So I have like this pinkish red lightning covering his body, and I know people might not like it like that, so don't worry, I also included a version without the overclock. And lastly, just for finishing touches, I put in a little biopod in the background to show how he teleported, or at least got to the pallet in the portrait. But with that, the portrait is now complete. Okay, what I'm about to say might be a bit controversial here in the community, and it might get me crucified, but I much prefer the Xenomorph's PTB chase music more than his new one. His new chase music just feels so painfully generic, and it really feels like a default chase music on its own. Like, it really feels like I could just put this on Trapper and it just wouldn't feel any different. Sorry for that little rant, I've just really been wanting to say that for a long time. Anyways, the Xenomorph. One of cinematic history's best monster designs ever, and the first chapter that released when I started playing this game. The Alien chapter as a whole is a chapter I'm extremely grateful for, as it's what got me hooked into DBD, but it's also the one that helped get my dream chapter into this game. Alright, now I understand the Xenomorph is a bit of a controversial killer within the community, as Survivor mains say that the tail attack is really hard to dodge, Xenomorph players not really liking the low POV when going into tail mode, or just the flame turrets in general, or people just not liking the way the Xenomorph was represented in this game. But in my personal opinion, I think they did pretty good with the Xenomorph. Now, I'm only a surface level fan of the Alien series, but I have seen the community come up with a lot of concepts of the way that they would have represented the Xenomorph, and while a lot of them are cool, I just think they wouldn't really work in DBD, to be honest. So at least to me personally, the Xenomorph that we have in-game today is a pretty decent way to represent the Xenomorph. So let's get into its powers, shall we? The Xenomorph has 3 unique things to its power. Number 1, the Xenomorph's tail mode. In tail mode, the Xenomorph gets on all 4s, and are given access to the Xenomorph's tail. This tail is extremely useful as it not only gives the Xenomorph extra range, but it also gives you the ability to hit over loops, pallets, and vaults. The tail mode charges passively as the trial goes on, but it is pretty slow. But if you use the Xenomorph's second unique ability, the tunnels, it actually charges up way faster. These tunnels not only serve as a way for you to charge up your tail mode faster, but it also works as a fast travel to get around the map quicker. Speaking of the tunnels, every tunnel entrance has a control station on top of it. Each control station contains a flame turret, which the survivors could use to place down anywhere on the map. And if you get burned long enough by the flame turrets, you'll lose access to tail mode, and will have to wait for it to recharge passively again. And that's the Xenomorph's power, and in this portrait I really wanted to try to represent it all. Okay, so fun fact, while I was excited to do this portrait, I was also somewhat scared because Xenomorphs are so fucking hard to draw. Like, they are some of like the hardest things you could ever draw. So I decided to do the same thing I did with the Singularity and draw the Xenomorph from the front, which from the perspective I wanted for this portrait actually worked out, so I'm pretty happy with how it came out. And as you can see right now, I decided to put the Xenomorph on all 4s to not only represent his tail mode, which I will draw the tail later on, you'll see, but I also just really love how animalistic the Xenomorphs are in-game, and just in the movies in general. Seriously, Behavior, please give us more animalistic killers, I'm begging you. Alright, after I got the Xenomorph down, I wanted to draw the flame turrets, because, well, controversial opinion, but I actually really like the flame turrets. I think it's really cool that survivors get like a way to fight back against the killer rather than just running and using pallets, you know? So fun fact, I wasn't gonna originally include the tunnels since my original idea for the portrait was gonna be the Xenomorph and the flame turrets, but this comment left by one of the requesters for Xenomorph actually made me change my mind. And I also wanted to do it because a lot of survivors also do make the mistake of just putting the flame turrets right outside the tunnels. But it also just adds more to the Xenomorph's portrait here, so truly thank you for that comment. While the coloring process for this portrait went pretty good, in general, I just really don't like working with dark colors because I was really proud of the Xenomorph's outline here. But using dark colors, I had to try to balance it so that, you know, everything could stand out from each other, or at least make the Xenomorph a lot more noticeable on the portrait when compared to the tunnels and the flame turrets, you know? The perspective tool also came in clutch here, since I could actually use the perspective to help differentiate the flame turrets, the tunnel, and the Xenomorph from each other. One more thing, you might notice that the background here is a bit different compared to my other ones, and that's because I try to base the background off of Nostromo's wreckage. I wish I could have included the big-ass ship in the back, but there was no space. It's a really tiny portrait. But with that, the portrait is now complete. And the final killer of today's video is none other than the Blight, who is by far my most requested killer. And while he isn't my favorite killer, I can definitely see why a lot of people do like him. His design is pretty cool and has a pretty simple power, yet a fun one at that. And being one of the only killers to have an effect on the others, i.e. the Blighted skins. But like, how the fuck did he inject Nemesis and Xeno? Like, how the fuck did you manage to capture them? Oh wait, let me get back to the video. Now I'm gonna be honest here, I don't exactly know Blight's lore, as it's kind of all over the place for me. So I'm just gonna say what I do know. The Blight's real name is Talbot Grimes, and he was an alchemist established in the game somewhere, and was obsessed with the entity. And once the entity took him into its realm, he started to study this glowy flower, which is where his serum comes from. But the entity didn't like that, since these glowy flowers are the only things that can really hurt it, and it tossed Mr. Grimes into the void, and basically left him to die. But he found a glowy flower there and then used it to make serum, which then he used to escape the void. But then he continued to use this serum on himself, eventually becoming the Blight. At least I think that's his lore. As I said, there's like 5 different things about Blight's lore that I don't really understand, to be honest. Still pretty interesting how he is one of the very few characters that has canonically escaped the entity's void. Neat. Anyway, let's get to his power, shall we? The Blight's power is called Lethal Rush, and as I said earlier, it's pretty simple. It's a dash type of ability, although you can't attack with your first dash, and can only attack once you bounce off of something. And this is exactly what I wanted to represent in the portrait. But to be honest, I kind of find his power really hard to represent within a single still image. I mean, it's not impossible, and I had ideas on how to do it, but the ideas that I did have all seemed pretty lazy to me. So for this portrait, I decided to get a bit more creative and give him some movement. You know, like animation. Okay, before I get into the portrait, I do want to say a couple things about this one. For one, yes, this one is animated. Now before I get any comments saying, oh, you know, you can't use animated GIFs in-game, it's not gonna work. As I said in my intro, I was doing this series for fun and didn't really plan on anyone actually using these in-game. So of course, when I thought of the Blight's portrait idea, I was thinking more of the fun aspect and how I could represent his power fully. And also don't worry, a non-animated version of the portrait will be in the Google Drive, so you know, just go to that if you so wish. And one more thing before I get into the details of the portrait, please don't request any animated killer portrait ideas you have. These animated portraits are strictly for the killers whose powers are really hard to represent with a single still image, and I only really plan to have at least 2 more killers with an animated portrait. But if this animated portrait is received well, maybe I'll consider making more killers with an animated portrait. Anyways, let me get into the portrait itself now. As you saw, I gave the Blight a little chibi form, and I did that because animation is really hard. So to make it easier on myself, I wanted to give him a chibi form. And also, if you've seen my YouTube shorts, I really love making little chibi designs of characters. Now, the background might not seem like much, and that's mostly because, I had to put in a couple objects to represent the Blight bouncing off of stuff. And I mostly took inspiration from Macmillan Estate, or at least the Groaning Storehouse, I believe it's called, with like a bunch of like different debris and rubble all around the map. And as you'll see like a couple frames of like the Blight bumping into stuff. And I mostly did that because it's really funny to do that, and it's only seen for like 1 frame, so I thought it would be even funnier. Now, the little chibi Blight facing forward, I originally did have a time-lapse for that one on its own, but my dumbass deleted it, so just take my word and I'll say that it was fine. Actually, this entire animation, or at least this part with the chibi form, only really took about 4 days. And that's actually really fast considering how slow I am at making art. But it doesn't mean my back didn't hurt at the end of it, because it really fucking did. Then after I got the chibi animation done, I had to draw the Blight's true portrait, or at least like the ending frames to it. And this part kind of annoyed me, I'm not gonna lie. Well, for one, I had a lot of trouble drawing the Blight's mouth. It's a very particular shape, and it just really annoyed me, honestly. And another thing that annoyed me about doing this true portrait was references. Because for some reason, even though the Blight has been into the game for like, 4 years, there are almost like no clear images of him, which is very strange. And it came back to bite me in the butt. I'm trying to keep my swearing in check, but it came to bite me back in the butt because I didn't realize that Blight had 6 fingers. So for most of this, he only has 5, and I only really added on the 6th finger after most of the coloring process was done. So thank you. And another thing about the poor references, I had to use a lot of fan art. So, his clothing is just kind of really simple, and I'm really sorry for that. I just wish there were better images or references of him in-game. But even though his clothing is really simple, I did have a lot of fun doing, like, the textures and the dirtiness to it. And also the wrinkles to the clothing. I thought that was really fun to do as well. Then, after I got the true portrait done, I had to add it to the animation, and it's really simple, but I think it works, you know? Anyways, the portrait is now complete. Before I end this video, I just want to give a shout out to my friends again for helping me get the killer clips at the beginning of each of these killer segments. We all have a channel where we react to animated pilots / indie animation and or random shit from the internet, so please go check it out. The link is in the description. Ooh, and one more thing, Springtrap is definitely going to be in the next episode of this series. Now, as I said many times, I don't really like showing bias towards certain killers in this series, but man, FNAF was my dream chapter, and, I just gotta do Springtrap, you know? But even though Springtrap is a definite for the next episode, I will be doing 3 other killers based on your requests. So if you have a killer that you really want me to do and I haven't done them yet, please let me know down in the comment section below. Or if you want to see more things from me, please consider hitting that subscribe button or checking out my Blue Sky or Instagram. And with that, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.